Hey everybody, it's Peter, and in this video we're going to compare the Subaru Crosstrek with the Hyundai Kona. Now these are both used vehicles. This one's a 2023, this one's a 2021, but even if you're looking at new vehicles, I think I'm going to be able to show you a lot of key differences that Subaru puts in the Crosstrek, even though the Crosstrek has been slightly updated for 2024, and I'll be able to show you the differences in the Kona. These vehicles are similar in a lot of ways that you wouldn't expect, but they also have really key differences between the two. And what I'm going to try to do is show you the differences between the two that the other videos aren't showing you. So take it beyond the spec sheet and try to show you a few things that you maybe wouldn't see in other videos. And again, I'm a big fan of the Crosstrek. I have a lot of history with the Kona. I used to work with the Kia and Hyundai dealers and used to do a whole bunch of stuff on YouTube for them. So I'm very familiar with this vehicle. I'm very familiar with this vehicle. And I think you're gonna find some of the differences to be surprising and some of the differences to be important to you. So in this video, I'm filming here at Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals here in Fredericton, New Brunswick. If you are interested in a vehicle, this is the place to go. And of course, if you want to see more on these vehicles that I don't cover in this video, they give me complete access to their entire product line. So make sure you let me know in the comments what you want to see, and I'll make sure I answer you both in the comment section and in future videos. Let's get going with this review. So let's start with just covering the obvious. Both of these are small crossovers, at least that's what we call them today. Back in the day, not too many years ago, we would have called these small wagons, small cars, because let's face it, if they have all-wheel drive nowadays, they basically classify as a crossover, and that's what the manufacturers want you to buy because cars don't sell and crossovers do, I guess. So the Kona here is a little bit lower to the ground vehicle, and it is, again, very car-like. So that lower to the ground gives it car-like handling. Now, this one here, the Crosstrek, does have higher ground clearance. However, because Subaru has what's called a boxer engine, their drivetrain has a lower center of gravity than just about anything else on the road. And what that means is that although this one has a higher ground clearance, its center of gravity might be the same, might even be lower than the Kona. The greater point is they both handle like cars. Now, the other thing that's pretty common on the Kona, a pretty big styling detail on all but a couple trims, is large black plastic panels above the wheels. On the Kona, it's kind of style. Over here, Subaru tells you it's function, but let's be honest, it's function for both. If you head down gravelly, dirty roads, you're gonna get some of this area covered in those stones and it can chip the paint. On these ones, it won't chip the paint. The Kona does advertise you can lean things against here, like a bicycle or something like that, and it won't scratch the paint, and of course it's the same thing. The point is both of these vehicles are built for outdoor activities type people. The Subaru will probably take you a little further down a trail, but let's be honest, neither of these are Jeep Wranglers. You're not going too far down a trail, you're just getting to the trail head and taking your gear from there, and both of these are good for that. So let's start looking at the front. We're gonna look at the side, talk about some cargo carrying capabilities while we go to the trunk. Rear seat is a big difference in these vehicles, and then we're gonna talk technology because a lot of the technology in these cars is different, and there are key things that may make a big difference to you that may lead you to one over the other. So let's get going with that. All right, so we're gonna sort of freehand this a little bit. I'm gonna start at the front of these vehicles here. So first thing you're gonna find is a little bit more of a squared off front end here. So what I mean is it kind of comes square down and then goes level. Whereas if you look at the Crosstrek here, that off-roadiness kind of comes in because it comes square and gives you a little better what they call approach angle. Now again, neither one of these are a Jeep Wrangler, so it's not a huge difference. Let's talk about this 2023. This is an updated version here, updated styling, and you have the daytime running lights up there, which are full LED, and then you have projector beam headlights down there. So again, this is a little bit lower trim version on the Kona than it is on the Subaru, but the Subaru doesn't have those projector beam headlights in there. Now, if you have a Crosstrek with the projector beam headlights, they are steering responsive. So what that means is if they look like those headlights over there, on the Subaru, they can actually steer a little bit with your steering wheel to aim down the road. That's an advantage that Hyundai doesn't have. Another thing that's interesting about the Subaru, this one happens to have a front-facing camera underneath the logo there. Let's see if we can get that out of the sun glare. There you go, front-facing camera. We're gonna show you that on the inside. That is not a 360 camera. It doesn't have the cameras on the sides, but there is a front-facing camera. You do not have that on the Kona, and you cannot get that on the Kona. So you're gonna have a little bit of extra differences there. Now, what the Kona does have is a little V in the windshield right there with a single camera. So what that camera does is it does things like forward collision avoidance. It can give you some space in front, and it's capable of seeing things in front of the vehicle and capable of slowing or stopping the vehicle in an emergency. It also does things like lane keeping assist, which we're going to talk about a little bit more in the future. Subaru is the one manufacturer that uses a completely different system. They are the only manufacturer that uses this multi-camera system. So you can see a camera right in there in the center of your screen and another camera in there in the center of your screen. And that means that they can do everything with just the cameras. So when I say everything, there's no radar plate on the front of this vehicle. On the higher end Konas, you would have a radar plate for things like advanced systems, advanced safety systems, but also things like smart cruise control. The Subaru uses the multi-camera system and judges distance with the two cameras, and therefore it can give you smart cruise control just with that camera system. There is an advantage here on the camera system because as long as your windshield is clear, it can give you smart cruise control. In the Canadian winters, when there is a radar plate down here on the Kona, if it gets covered with snow, you lose not only your smart cruise control, but things like your forward collision avoidance. So it's something to keep in mind. Almost every manufacturer uses the radar plate and camera. This one in particular does not have a radar plate, but it is something to know that Subaru system is just relying on your windshield being clear. This one relies on your windshield being clear, and if it had that radar plate on the front end being clear. Again, no big deal there. Now, both of these vehicles are also all-wheel drive. We're going to talk about that a little bit more, but basically this is a front-wheel drive vehicle, and it has a little loop around to connect to the, sort of a loop around to go to the rear wheels. So you've got front wheels, rear wheels, both powered. Now, because of the configuration of the engine, you have unequal length drive shafts. Not a big deal, but it's worth noting. The Subaru's symmetrical all-wheel drive, because that engine is a different design, it sits lower, it also allows equal length drive shafts front and rear, or to the front, and drives the drive shaft to the rear. And what that means is, mechanically, this one splits the power very equally, whereas this one's going to rely on a little bit of electronic intervention in order to get you certain things. What's different, or what's interesting about both these vehicles is the electronics actually close the gap on the mechanical advantage that the Subaru has. What that means is when you start in the Hyundai Kona, all four wheels receive power. And as you lose, or as you continue to have traction, it will back off the power and give you just power on the front wheels. The Subaru always starts in all four wheels as well, and it can move power around, but it is generally driven by all four wheels almost all the time. So again, you don't need all-wheel drive when you have good traction, and if it's poor traction, it's going to continue to give you all-wheel drive on the Kona. But the Subaru also has that all-wheel drive. Now, the difference with the Subaru is it can send more power to the rear. This car can only go 50-50 front and rear. This one can go beyond 50-50 front and rear. At the end of the day, in the snow, both systems are excellent, and I recommend snow tires with both in order to give you good traction. So that's one key difference between all-wheel drive systems is this one, it's not a slip and grip system. They used to be the front had to slip for the rear to grip. It always starts in all-wheel drive. This one always starts in all-wheel drive. As this one sees, hey, it's a beautiful day like today, I don't need to give you all-wheel drive. I'm going to save you some fuel by going just front-wheel drive. This one's going to remain in an all-wheel drive type state, but it can move power around. All right, let's quickly talk roof racks before we move to the trunk. Both of these vehicles have them. Both of these vehicles are useful. It's a little shorter and a little more streamlined here on the Kona, but both these vehicles can take luggage up top, and that's good because neither of these have massive trunks, and being able to take your luggage like your canoes, your kayaks, or even a cargo box is going to allow you to take extra gear. So there's the side view. Now we're gonna go trunk, rear seat, and then we're gonna talk technology on the inside. So as we take a look at the trunk, let's talk about a few features here on the Subaru. First of all, this one has the normal trunk button here under the logo. That's pretty common stuff, but it also has a little button under here. Now you can't see it, it's pretty hard to video, but it's a little tiny little one finger button. You can set up a passcode on this. You can disable the wire or the key fob, throw it in the vehicle, and you can set up a passcode on this by hitting multiple taps. So let's say we want to do 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. You tap it 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. I think it has to be a 5 or 6 digit code, but the point is you can hit a code on this single button right here. That is a code that you set up that will allow you to get into this vehicle without the key. If you're a kayaker, if you're a camper, if you're that kind of thing and you want to lock the keys in the vehicle and not take them with you, you can do that on the Subaru. A lot of people don't know about that, but this Crosstrek has it, and all the Crosstreks are gonna have that, at least all the ones that I know of. So at least the newer ones. So let's open the trunk here and say, actually, before we open the trunk, let's talk about one thing. This one has an accessory hitch on that. That is a 2-inch receiver hitch. That's the factory hitch from Subaru. On the factory hitch from Hyundai, which we'll show you, that one doesn't have it, it is a smaller diameter hitch. So something to keep in mind, if you have a larger bike rack that fits larger vehicles, it'll fit into here no problem, whereas that one, if you have a larger bike rack, you'll have to get an adapter to fit the smaller hitch. Just something to keep in mind, but again, both can take your accessories on a hitch. This one actually has a little bit of towing capacity as well. All right, down here, this one happens to have the Subaru mat in here. That's pretty typical. You can get a hard mat in either of these vehicles. You've got a cargo cover down here. There is a small compact spare tire underneath the floor, and the floor does not lower. This one does have more visual trunk space than the Kona. The other nice thing is there is a little light up here. You can turn the light on or off for the door. It's a little LED light. It shines down not just in the trunk, but also gives you a little bit light just beyond the trunk. That's the Subaru trunk. Let's go look at the Kona. Taking a look at the Kona here, typical stuff. Of course, you got the wiper on both of them, that kind of thing. There is no button to lock the key in the car. It's pretty typical trunk in here. And again, the hitch, if you put it on from the factory, is going to be a little bit smaller hitch. So if you have a larger bike rack, you're going to want an adapter. Otherwise, you buy a little bit smaller bike rack hitch. Tap this open. Neither one of these have powered tailgates. Now this, again, a little bit smaller trunk, and there is a spare tire underneath, a compact spare tire, but this one does have a trick up its sleeve where you can drop the floor like this. As you do that, you gain a couple inches of space to fit underneath that cargo cover. It does bring the trunk size closer between the two. That little ramp up allows you to fold down the seats and still have that ramp up to those rear seats. So if you wanted to have a little bit bigger trunk than the Kona has, you do have the option of lowering this floor down. You've got tie downs in the floor there here. No lights up here. Actually, yep, there's one light in here on the Kona, so you still have some light in there. Both of them also have an area to put grocery bags or other cargo net type stuff. So you've got that in both vehicles. Both also have the ability to have 3 car seats across. So again, how much trunk space do you need in a compact car? This one's good, that one's a little bit better, but both are fairly decent for the class. Now let's check out rear seat room, where there is definitely a difference. All right, as we head inside these vehicles and start with the rear seat here, I should point out that these vehicles are different trim lines, and you will see that as we go throughout the vehicle. But keep in mind, here's what we've got. You have leather-like seats here on the Subaru. Now these are not real leather. This is an artificial leather, which is known to be a water-resistant fabric. That's a kind of cool feature for a Subaru. And but as far as features back here, no vents, no ports in this model here, no pocket on the driver's side, but there is a pocket on the passenger side. I don't know why we still do that. You've got 2 cup holders, and when I say I don't know why you do that, we should still put pockets on both sides in my mind. Single button down there for the windows. Let's jump into this and show you the space inside. All right, so a lot of small crossovers, the rear seat is very tight, but you can see here I've got all the headroom I need, and the biggest thing is my legs are flush to the seat and comfortably down here. Now, one thing you'll notice here, if we go the right way, you will see good legroom. This driver's seat is set up where I would need it to drive, and I have good legroom. You're gonna see less in the Kona. Let's go take a look at that right now. All right, with the Kona being the lower trim, you are going to see cloth seats in here, but let's take a look at the features you see on this lower trim vehicle. Over here, you do have a USB port. You don't have vents on this trim level, and you have a little spot for your phone. No pocket over here, but you do have a netted pocket on that side. That seat is way farther back, so this one is set up where I would need it. What is kind of cool about the plastic back seats is they're very easy to wipe down, and if you have kids in car seats that are going to touch that or something like that with their feet up there, you're not going to scratch the leather or the cloth or anything else. So you do have sort of a nice feature there, cup holders in the center, and again, like I said, lower trim, but you do have a single USB port, so you have some features for your rear passenger. Jumping inside the Kona is really where you start seeing the difference. Headroom, same thing. It's a little bit less, but it's fine. I'm 6 feet, I fit fine down here. Taking a look down here, you'll see my legs are also flush on the seat. And one thing you'll notice though is less legroom. It is tighter back here for taller riders. Now again, this seat is set to where I need it, and I fit behind myself, so it's fine for a 6-footer behind a 6-footer. But the other one just has more room. You can get more comfortable in the front seat. You can recline it more. You can move it further back. You can do those kinds of things in the Crosstrek. It's just a little bit bigger in the Crosstrek than here in the Kona. But comfort-wise, pretty good in both. So as we head inside these vehicles, we have to remember that the Subaru is the higher trim vehicle, but I'll show you the keys before we get going. You can see here the key fob on both. The Subaru on the right has lock, unlock, and trunk button. The Hyundai adds a remote start feature. Both keys are similar size, similar function, so the Hyundai being the lower trim still has a remote start. The Subaru does not. Of course, the Subaru, you can lock that key in the car by disabling it and using that sort of keypad type idea on the back. Now I've got the Subaru running already because it's a pretty hot day, so we're gonna jump right in here and talk about some of the tech differences between these cars. Again, both keys are keyless entry, so you can just touch the door handle and jump in. Now, again, that artificial leather trim, which is actually more of a waterproof function. Let's go fully wide angle as we jump in and take a look at what we have here. So Subaru and Hyundai both have a similar dash layout. Let's just zoom in for a second. You've got an analog gauge on the outside and a similar display screen in the middle. Both are color screens. Subaru uses a different color scheme, of course. The difference with this Subaru is it has that screen up there, where a modern Subaru, it combines that screen into a single flat screen, but the technology is basically the same. One thing I do want to show you though, as we take a look at that screen right, whoa, sorry about that. That screen right there is you can change a lot of functions on this, but this does have that forward-facing camera. Someone just pulled in front of us there. You can see them backing around. This is looking out the front of the car, not the rear of the car. So if you are parking with objects right around you, you do have that option of that front-facing camera up there. Excuse it as it's fading out there. It's just the way a screen sometimes works when you're filming it. It is actually perfectly clear, but it may be fading out there. So that is your forward-facing camera. Now let's go down to here and throw it into reverse, and we can keep the forward-facing camera on while also looking at the very clear rear-facing camera. So again, kind of an interesting forward and rear look here. It's something you can't get in any of the Hyundai Kona models, so that's kind of interesting. Now, over here on this stereo system, you have all the typical types of stuff. So we can go into your radio here, and you can see AM, FM, Sirius XM. You're gonna have those options in the Kona as well. What you have in this one though is Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, and it is a wired function. You couldn't get wireless until the 2024, whereas the Hyundai, we're going to talk about wired and wireless because there's options to have a current car with wired and a current car with wireless, and it's confusing because they do it backwards. We'll get to that in a second. Stay tuned for that because Hyundai kind of does strange things with that. But no wireless option here. You do have a CD player. You almost never see a modern car with a CD player. They still have that in this one here. Automatic climate control, so set it to the temperature you want and forget it. Big storage area here. You've got your transmission down here, easy to work, and then you've got nice buttons with the seat heaters, or I like to call them rump roasters. I was just going to call them rump roasters, but not everybody knows I call them that. Seat heaters are nice here because you can turn them on and they stay on. You can see that the button stays pushed down. In the Hyundai, you're gonna get in your car every single time in the winter, you're gonna turn on the car and you're gonna turn on your seat heaters because they will not stay on the Hyundai. X mode all-wheel drive changes some of the parameters of your all-wheel drive system. This car is always all-wheel drive, but you do have an ability to take it a little bit more extreme if you get into rougher situations. Now, coming across here, remember we talked about the camera system in the front of this? This had the dual camera system. That shows up in your cruise control here and in your lane keeping assist. So first of all, cruise control. Let's talk about what we're doing with, oops, go the wrong way. Cruise control, it can see the vehicle in front of you and it can keep its distance from that vehicle. And you can set how far that distance is by using this button or that button, closer or further away. So cruise control sets you to a speed, but if a vehicle comes in front, it'll slow down. If it clears, it will speed back up to the set speed. That is done only through these camera systems right up in here. The Kona has that ability on some trim levels, but not the one we're looking at today. But then you have the self-steering. And when I say self-steering, what it does is it sees the lane markers in front of you and centers you in the lane. On the Subaru, that's only available when you have the cruise control running. So that is interesting. Other than that, typical radio buttons over here, phone buttons over here. You've got the extra display. You can adjust your fingers here to adjust that display here. That's kind of the basics. Visibility is very good. Blind keeping, blind spot warning. You have a warning light here, which is a little bit larger than the Hyundai, which will be here. Let's go take a look at that Hyundai right now and compare some of the differences. All right, Hyundai Kona, we're gonna hop in that one. There are little differences here as well. On the Subaru, you could touch the back of the door handle to unlock it. This one, you need to touch that button to unlock it. Again, still hands-free, or still no key to pull out of your pocket. That's not necessary. This one has cloth trim, and again, this one's a lower trim, so you're gonna see a little bit of that lower trim. But we're gonna talk about some of this as we jump in here and turn the power on, because it is hot in here as well. All right, let's go fully wide angle again so you can see what's going on here. Again, you still have dial, and a color display screen. Now again, you can decide which one you think is better, which one gives you more information. I think they're both pretty good, but again, a little bit different there. Now, this environment is a little bit closer to me, a little bit more compact in feel. The screen comes a little bit closer to me. Here's what's weird about what Hyundai does. First of all, let's just check the radio for a second. I believe you can go Sirius XM on this. No, this one is only, oh, sorry, it is Sirius XM available as well. So as we come back here, this is what Hyundai does very weird. There's an 8-inch screen here. That's what this is. With the 8-inch screen, which is the smaller of the two screens, it's probably actually a little bit bigger than the Hyundai screen. This 8-inch screen has wireless Android Auto and wireless Apple CarPlay. If you go to the 10-inch screen on a Kona, even right now, it does not have wireless. It is wired only. So although you can get wireless Android Auto and wireless Apple CarPlay in this vehicle, you can only get it if you don't go too far up the trim line. Go too far up the trim line and you won't get that feature. So that's kind of interesting here. Now this one does not have a smart cruise control. It can have the smart cruise control. This one just happens to not, but it does have the lane keeping assist, or lane follow assist is really what we're talking about here. So what that means is that it can see the lane markers and center yourself in the lane, but it does not need cruise control to be on to do it, which means anytime you want the car to sort of help steer, keep it centered in the lane, this one's capable of doing that, which is a real difference here. I find I use this feature quite a bit and I don't want to always use the cruise control, so it's kind of nice to have that on. It's going to make for a little bit better driving experience without the cruise control on. Overall here, we can show you the backup camera. Both of these cars have very clear backup cameras, so very easy to see. They both show you that the lane markers kind of change as we steer. So you can sort of see that. Blue is directly behind you and the other one's turn with the wheel. So kind of good situation there. Coming down over here, you have manual climate controls here. You can get automatic climate controls as well if you match trim lines. You do on this lower trim line have a USB port there, a USB port there, and a 12-volt port there. So if you don't want to go wireless Android Auto, wireless Apple CarPlay, you can still do it wired. This one has drive modes here, which we'll show you. The other one does as well, sort of low power, high power. This one is normal, sport, and smart. Smart would be an eco type mode. Although the smart mode is kind of cool because as it gets into the power band, as you get into, let me just try that again. Smart mode is your eco mode. Then there's sport and normal. So if you put it in smart mode and get into the throttle, it can automatically bump it into normal. And if you really get in throttle, it'll automatically move it to sport. But smart would be your default eco mode. It's where I would like to drive this car, or I would prefer to drive this car the way I drive. Let's go full wide angle again. Over here, a little bit less visibility because you have the mirror mounted here where Subaru kind of mounts it to the door and you can see through that little area. Subaru's very good with visibility. This one has a little marker right there in the window for your blind spot detection, which of course the Subaru has it over here. This one you have to kind of look at the mirror to see it, whereas the Subaru kind of shows up in your peripheral vision. So that's kind of just a little difference there. You also have on both these vehicles, they have Subaru has a Starlink system. This one has a Blue Link system. The point is it has buttons up here that can connect emergency services and also give you access to this vehicle through a cell phone app. The button for the X mode all-wheel drive, this one has a button for the 4x4 wheel drive lock, excuse me. So again, it can move power front and rear. If you're in deep, deep snow, you can use this button to help you get sort of unlatched from snow, but it is all-wheel drive when you need it. You don't have to do that. It doesn't work at higher speeds here. We can talk about that in another video. Both vehicles did have heated seats and heated steering wheel. 2 levels of heated seats in the Subaru, 3 levels here in the Kona, but these turn off with the vehicle. Both had heated steering wheels. The heated steering wheel on the Subaru was on the steering wheel. This one's right down here. Pretty simple stuff. And then you've got overall right here, just a little coupled area. So let's talk about the two of these vehicles together now. So how do you decide which of these two vehicles is best for you? Well, let's talk about a couple differences. First of all, Subaru's symmetrical all-wheel drive. If you're just using it for snow, I would say the Hyundai is not far off. I know Subaru advertises this big all-wheel drive thing and every one of their vehicles have this symmetrical all-wheel drive. I will say that again, for snow use, the Hyundai is very capable. It starts with all 4 wheels rolling and then moves to an efficiency mode with front wheel drive only if the traction is still there. Subaru's is a little different system. Obviously they're legendary. I would say in some ways because of electronics, the manufacturers have caught up to each other in some systems, and I would say these are equal. So if it's only in snow, I don't think the average driver, and again, the average driver is going to notice any real significant difference between one or the other. Now, if you are going off-road, I do think the Subaru has a little bit better system there for an off-road. That X-Mode all-wheel drive just helps adapt to certain things, and that's something to keep in mind. Other differences that we talked about, again, a little bit more trunk space, a little bit more rear seat space, a little bit larger roof rack as well. So general cargo and passenger capacity is going to be slightly greater in the Crosstrek. And if you're buying a car that needs a lot of space, it's going to be better. But to be fair, if you need lots of space, you can move up a class from the Crosstrek and get a lot more space for similar money. So what are the real differerences? I think the real differences come down to things like that wireless Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, things like that helping you steer, that lane keeping assists, and the system in the Hyundai. You don't have to use cruise control in the Hyundai, and you have the ability to help with the steering. And again, the wireless Android Auto, wireless Apple CarPlay, for someone who does a lot of work on the road, to be able to just click into it rather than have to get that wire out and do that, I think that has some advantage. At the end of the day, both of these vehicles should be on your shopping list if you're looking in this class. And what I think the difference is going to be is just how you like them. And that's really the difference. If you sit in one versus sitting in the other, there is absolutely a different feel. Some people are gonna say, hey, this feels like what I want, and other people are gonna say, this feels like what I want. From a feature standpoint, you can match these vehicles pretty closely. So really what you need to do is check them out at a dealer yourself. So here, if you want to see them side by side, you come to Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals. You can compare them side by side, have the same person give you the same numbers, and he doesn't care or she doesn't care which one you buy. So that's the benefit of dealing with Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals, and of course they're also known as Canada's huggable car dealer. If you have questions about either of these cars, with maybe something that you want to know about them that I didn't answer, let me know in the comments below, because again, I have complete access to these vehicles and I can come back to them again and again to make sure I give you the answers that you need. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.